Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone, members, officers and members of the public to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to undertake a roll call of those attending online to ensure they can hear and be heard.
Thank you very much, Chair. We're only expecting one officer online tonight, and that's Sanoba Khan. No, is there anyone else online that I haven't called out? Okay, if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start? No? Okay, back to you, Chair.
Thank you. First of all, apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Nigel Mason, who will be participating as a member advocate. Having given due notice, Councillor Ian Mantle will be substituting for Councillor Mason. Any other apologies? Councillor Weeder. Councillor Tyler? Yeah. And Councillor Tyler. Thank you. Notification of other business, there is none. Chair's announcements, recording. In accordance with the council policy, this meeting is being recorded. Recording will be available on view on the council's mod.gov website or YouTube page. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. To clarify matters for the registered speakers, members of the public have 5 minutes for each group of speakers, supporters and objectors. There's a separate 5-minute time limit allocated to member advocates. A warning will be given at 4 minutes to alert you that you have 1 minute left. At 5 minutes, you'll be advised that the time allowed has ended and the speaker must cease. Section 4.8.23a. For the purpose of clarification, in order to vote an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration of that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they'll not be able to vote. Public participation. Can I confirm the following registered speakers in attendance? Hugh Love, Councillor Nigel Mason, Victoria Davis. Thank you. We'll get on with the agenda. Item 5, 23/00555/FP, land on the south of Alton Head Lane, Hitchin. Ben Glover to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the creation of an vehicle access that will provide access from Lower Innings onto land south of Alton Head Lane. I do have a couple of updates for members. So number one, we were hoping to be joined by Sanoba Khan, who's the Highways Officer for County. By the sounds of it, he hasn't been able to join us. So second update is hopefully members would have received a new map of the site that shows kind of the wider context of the area in which the application is proposed. And then finally, on my report in section paragraph 4.31, where I refer to the development, that just to clarify, that is in reference to the proposed access. So onto the slides, please. So this is the land south of Alton Head Lane. Unfortunately, where the access proposed has been cut off. Apologies for that. So next slide, please. There you go. That's a bit better. So You can see there in the red light outline, this is a location plan that shows where the access is proposed to be. So from Lower Innings, crossing Alton Head Lane and onto land. We said as land south of Alton Head Lane. Next slide, please. So this is the swept path analysis that shows the vehicles manoeuvring at the site entrance. Next slide, please. This is the visibility displays for users of Alton Head Lane, showing a 25-metre left and right field of view. Next slide, please. And this is the forward visibility display for users of the access, the road coming in and out of land south Alton Head Lane. Next slide, please. This is another example of the dimensions of the proposed access. Next slide. And again, this is a Volkswagen Touran, I think, a turning circle onto number 15, Lower Innings. Next slide, please. And then this is the tree protection plan. So this obviously shows the associated application for the 43 dwellings. I suppose the applicant has groups the protection plan together as one. So we see the access at the top of the site there. So next slide, please. So this is a photo. This is looking sort of northeast down Lower Innings. So the access would be behind where I'm standing there in the photo. Next photo, please. And there we see the current state. So there's a little access onto Alton Head Lane just there. And then the site is just behind. Next photo. So this is a bit further down the path, just kind of showing Alton Head Lane as it exists currently, or a few months ago anyway. So next slide, please. Again, so this is a bit further down. This is Westbury Close. So Lower Innings is to my left. Next slide, please. Again, another photo. So it's closer to the access, showing the state of Alton Head Lane. Next slide. And again, looking up Lower Innings, at the end there, top of the road was where the proposed access would start. Next slide. That's my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members, please? Councillor Daniel Allen.
Would it be possible to see the slide that showed the view for cars going on out of the site? Because it didn't appear to show the view for cars coming into the site, bearing in mind the access over Alton Head Lane. I'd just like to have another look at that if possible.
I think it's slide 7, if that helps. That's one. So yeah, this we have. So left is for vehicles leaving the site, and the right hand side would be vehicles from Lower Innings onto the site. So there is visibility displayed, showed in both directions.
Thank you. I couldn't see it properly last time. I appreciate that.
Is that okay, Councillor? Other questions? No? Councillor Bloxham, do you have a question? Thank you. Can we go through to the speakers, please? Can I ask Hugh Love to speak?
Good evening, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. I'm a resident of Lower Innings. I've been there for 40 years. Cala wrote to all the householders in 2021 with a letter plus a map The letter invited us to comment online on Cala's website, and they gave us a map showing their proposed development in detail. That was Cala's only communication to us and consultation with us, contrary to what's been reported in the local press. A copy of Cala's map, and I have a copy here in my hand, you may or may not have seen it, clearly shows that there was no crossing of Ottenhead Lane, either at the end of Westbury Close or at the top of Lower Innings. Cala said in that initial communication that the access to the site was via Bowler's End. Cala's plans have therefore changed. The document pack at 3.1 in the representations says that access from Lower Innings is most suitable. If that was the case, I wonder why that was not in Cala's original stated intention. The representation goes on to say that access via Cala's original plans is not viable because of the way cars are parked. Chair, cars have not suddenly parked differently as to how they were parked in the last 2 years. If cars parked on both sides of the road causing one-way traffic is sufficient grounds to prevent Cala's original access route, then the same criteria needs to be applied to the Lower Innings option. If you look at the Lower Innings plan, it starts off with a turn from Bedford Road into Redhill Road, which is an incredibly busy interchange. And although Redhill Road is much wider, cars are parked on both sides, creating several pinch points, including that opposite the school, which results in single track traffic. From Redhill Road into Westbury Close, all the way through to Lower Innings, there are 4 right-angled bends, all within less than 200 yards. And every part of Westbury Close and Lower Innings has residents' vehicles regularly parked on both sides from time to time. Chair, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. The meeting document pack at 4.3.20, the planning officer accepts that there will be, quote, a marked increase in traffic movements in the immediate vicinity, but then suggests that these would not be unusually high within a residential area. Westbury Close and all the roads which spur off of it, including Lower Innings, are cul-de-sacs which have never carried any through traffic. So any increase, never mind a marked increase, must by definition be unusually high for this residential area. Cala's own noise assessment admits that noise levels for Lower Innings residents will be excessive. All this demonstrates unsuitability on the grounds of highway safety and congestion, and will put other road users and pedestrians alike at greater risk. One resident has submitted a range of photographs illustrating the current levels of congestion and pinch points. I know that some of the committee visited the development site and looked at the proposed access route, so you'll have seen for yourselves the traffic volume problems that are likely to be caused by both construction traffic and increased through traffic. Moving on to other points, the planning officer observes that Ottenhead Lane is a restricted byway used for a mixture of walking, cycling and horse riding. It's also the main access from the town centre to Ottenhead Common and is used by many pedestrians as their route to the Common, which I'm sure you know was announced on NHDC's website and Twitter account last week as one of North Arts Council's 5 award-winning green spaces for the 8th consecutive year. Looking at the National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 100, it says planning policies and decisions should protect and enhance public rights of way and access. Chair, it isn't protecting and enhancing a byway by building an access road across
There's
it.
1 minute left.
By building a road across it, which is going to be so busy that it will need traffic control and calming measures. The planning officer and the public rights of way officer have both noted that Ottenhead Lane is a route for walking, cycling and horse and carriage use, and any vehicle crossing the route must be subservient to those rights. But we haven't seen any clarity on how this is going to be achieved. In the document pack at 6.1.3, it states that no access should be permitted until detailed technical plans are submitted to and approved by the Planning Authority and Highway Authority. Surely this should be done now so that we can all look at the efficacy and appropriateness of these measures, and not at some undefined time in the future when it's too late to influence this decision. Document pack 6.1.5 states that prior to the first use of access by any construction traffic.
Finish your sentence, please.
Sorry?
Finish your sentence.
I'm sorry, Chair. Yes. Document Pack 6.1.5 states that prior to the first use of access by any construction traffic, the surface of Ottenhead Lane must be protected from any surface and side damage. But the whole concept of access via Lower Innings must, by definition, irrevocably damage the surface of Ottenhead Lane. Am I okay to proceed?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. You've had over your time. But
Fine.
I'll let you continue until you got to the end of the sentence. Thank you. Do we have explain to the residents who are observing this meeting that when I was asking for questions, it is only the councillor members who can ask questions. Have we got any questions, clarification of Mr. Love from the councillor members, please? Councillor Sean Nolan.
Thank you. Just to clarify, from the noise assessment, can you specify exact? So I missed what you said there. The rating it was given.
I didn't mention the rating that was given. CALA did their own assessment, and I do not have it in front of me. But as I recollect, the expert they brought in to carry out the assessment said that the noise was likely to be excessive and would exceed normal limits for any resident of Lower Innings who had their windows open.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
That's my recollection. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Fine. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Other questions for clarification? No? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Love. And we now please have Councillor Nigel Mason.
I'm okay to speak from back here, Chair?
Yes?
Okay. We're good on lines of sight at the moment. Some people got that joke. Okay. This is not Calahome's first plan to access the area known locally as Warby's Field, or the second, as Mick has said, as Hugh has said. They've wandered around the area like a reveller on their way home from a night out who've lost their home door key. First, in late 2021, Cala tried to gain access via Alton Head Way, Lavender Way, and Bowler's End. That attempt was abandoned, presumably because it was a really, really bad idea. Then last year, we saw an attempt to gain access via Westbury Close, again abandoned, which brings us to their third choice, Lower Innings. Another bad option, but perhaps Cala's last chance of making it home to Warby's Field. I'd like to take members on a short road trip, if I may, which you can follow on the map, which I think you got yesterday. We'll start our journey as our vehicle turns off Bedford Road and into Redhill Road, past Redhill Road shops, dodging the double parked cars and death-defying pedestrians trying to cross, and speeds up Redhill Road. And I use speeds advisedly. We have a huge issue with speeding in Westmill. When our driver reaches Alton School, he now has a sharp left-hand turn into Westbury Close, hopefully missing the cars and vans parked there, making it effectively single lane most of the time. Then he follows Westbury Close round, past junctions with Friday Furlong and Spellbrook in quick succession, then a sharp dogleg right into Lower Innings. Then it's straight up at Lower Innings, and then what? Straight over the busy Alton Head Lane bridleway into the proposed new housing. Lives may depend on how fast that van can go straight over Alton Head Lane. And I'm really not convinced this application gives us the clarity we need to know about how safe an option that crossing would be. We have three key objections to this application, which I laid out in my call-in letter. Firstly, traffic heading to and from the proposed new housing would have to travel up and down Redhill Road, an already busy road through Westmill, seriously blighted by speeding traffic, a road with local shops and a primary school, and no pedestrian crossings. What really worries me is the junction of Redhill Road and Westbury Close opposite the school. It's a sharp corner on and off a fast, straight road. And there are often vans and a minibus parked in that stretch of Westbury, making it single lane, as Hugh mentioned. We are shocked that there are no conditions suggested by by highways to mitigate the significant road safety issues caused by such an increase in traffic up Redhill Road into Westbury Close and up Lower Innings. I would not presume to advise the committee, but I do ask you to consider the serious safety concerns involved here and how they could be avoided or mitigated. As it stands, this recommendation has more conditions in place to protect the condition of the road than to protect the safety of residents. Secondly, we have Lower Innings itself. Lower Innings, like its neighbours Westbury Close, Spellbrook and Friday Furlong, were all designed and built as cul-de-sacs. None are suitable for through traffic, certainly not the volume than 43 new houses. Anyone visiting the area will share our concern about vehicles making the sharp turn from Westbury Close into Lower Innings. Quite how heavy construction traffic will do it, I fail to understand. Finally, perhaps the most contentious issue locally, how can road traffic safely cross the busy footpath and bridleway Alton Head Lane? This is a public right-of-way and a restricted byway in constant use of walkers, people with small children, cyclists, runners and horse riders. Alton Head Lane is the main route from Hitchin out to the popular
You have 1 minute left.
Alton Head Common Nature Reserve. It is a lane with a school at either end, Alton and Samuel Lucas. How on earth do we think vehicles are going to safely cross that pathway? In Cala's own traffic report, 4.2.3 states that the public rights officer requests that the intersection of the access and the lane be designed with priority for non-motorised users, pedestrians, cyclists and equestrians using Alton Head Lane. A good idea, but sadly now dropped. Will this application, as it stands, protect the safety of those pedestrians, cyclists and riders using this byway when it's crossed by cars, vans and trucks? We need far more clarity on this. I'll conclude with two relevant sections from the National Planning Policy Framework. Para 1 states planning policies and decisions should protect and enhance public rights of way and access. This application clearly breaches that. Para 111 says that developments should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. We believe this application is such a case and should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions, clarification for Councillor Nigel Mason? I have one. Could you just make it clear about the rights of way? So in fact, it is in fact the motor vehicles which will actually have precedence over cyclists, pedestrians and horses. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. The public rights of way officer requested that it be the other way round, that pedestrians and cyclists have right of way, which I thought was a good idea, but that was overruled within the application. A decision was taken that was not the best way to do it. So yeah, vehicles will come have a right of way across the public footpath.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Mason. Can I call on Victoria Davis? Let's come forward. When you're ready.
Good evening. I'm Vicky Davis, Development Planning Manager at DLA Town Planning, and I'm the agent for the applicant. Thank you for meeting tonight to consider this application, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I don't have much to add to the officer's report before you, which addresses all of the issues in detail. However, I will just pick up on a few concerns which have been raised. The safety of the users of the right-of-way. Understandably, people are concerned about traffic crossing a well-used right-of-way. The land allocated for housing development by Local Plan Policy HD3 is required by the policy to take access from either Westbury Close or Lower Innings. The principle of the access crossing the right of way is therefore established by policy HT3. The applicant has explored providing access from Westbury Close, but this isn't possible due to land ownership issues. The access to the site is therefore only possible via lower innings in line with the policy. The safety of the proposals has been carefully considered prior to the application submission by the applicant's design team and their consultants, and in consultation with the Highway Authority. A stage 1 road safety audit was undertaken prior to the submission of the application, and minor amendments made to the scheme to ensure a safe environment for all users. The Highway Authority, the statutory consultee, and expert advisors on such matters has no objection to the application. Wider highways issues. Concerns have been raised about traffic generation, the impact on the wider highway network, and access to sustainable forms of transport. These would be matters for consideration when the planning application for the residential development comes before you, rather than at this time. The loss of trees, hedgerow, and ecological implications. The impact of the application before you on trees, hedgerows, and ecology is limited, as the losses are restricted to those only necessary to provide the access to the allocated housing site as per the local plan policy. There would be the loss of one category U tree and a group of category C trees and 14 metres of hedgerow. These losses are unavoidable if any access is to be provided to housing site HT3. This would have been considered by the council from the start of the process in identifying the land for housing and specifying the location of the access to the land. The application is accompanied by relevant assessments and documents which ensure retained trees and hedgerows are protected during development. Residential amenity. It is appreciated that some local residents would experience an increase in traffic passing their homes as a result of the new housing. This would be considered again in the determination of the application for the residential development of the allocated site. Finally, the reason for submitting a separate planning application for the access is due to the time required for the Section 278 process. By seeking planning permission for the access ahead of the wider residential development, it would be possible to commence the Section 278 process while the application for the housing is still being considered. This would minimise delays in commencement of the development once planning permission for the residential element is granted. Overall, I would endorse the officer's report and hope you are able to support the recommendation for approval of the access specifically referred to in local plan policy HT3. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any points of clarification for members? Councillor Daniel Allen.
2, if possible, Chair. One, would it be possible to explain to the people watching what Section 278 is? And the other question was, you said that there'll be cutting back of 14 metres of hedgerows. Is that on each side of the hedgerow? So 14 metres on one side, 14 metres on the other, or is it sort of like 14 metres in total?
Okay, I'll deal with the hedgerow first. That's in total. So 14 metres in total of hedgerow would be lost. A 278 process is a highway process that you have to go through to get the Highway Authority's agreement on the detailed drawings and the detailed specification of a new access to or from a highway. So it's separate to the planning process, but has to be gone through before development can be commenced.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions? Councillor Tom Tyson.
Thank you. Yeah, just at the start of your presentation, you explained why the Westbury Close option wasn't taken up, and I didn't quite catch what the explanation for that was. Would you mind elucidating on that a bit?
I said it was due to land ownership issues. I understand that there is a part of the land which is still owned by the original housing developer, so it wasn't an option in terms of purchasing that piece of land for my client.
Yes, your follow-up question?
Yeah, but that option was explored at some point. Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Pearce.
Could I clarify that a full assessment of the transport effects on the wider area is in process for the application for 43 dwellings?
Yes, I can confirm that the application for the housing development has a full transport assessment with it.
Further questions? Councillor Levitt?
Yeah, there's in the Limes transport assessment, there's quite a low number of delivery vehicle things, and it's only 6 days a week, not 7. Amazon delivers in 7 day a week, and I deliver practically everywhere, I think. I think the number's quite low in there, but right at the very end of it, in the strategy to promote sustainable travel, it actually says in there, promote home deliveries and the use of online food superstores and resident travel information pack. So you're actually proposing to increase those deliveries. Was that taken into account with your numbers?
I'm not a transport expert, but I'll do my best to answer the question. What you're actually talking about is the transport work which relates to the housing development specifically, because obviously we will only get deliveries if we have housing. But my understanding is that those two apparently conflicting points were considered together. So the promotion of home deliveries was taken into account in the figures, yes.
Councillor Levitt, does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan?
So policy HT3 states that access from Westbury Close or Long Innings, whilst maintaining the general integrity and character of Aughtonhead Lane. I was wondering if you could explain a bit about how the current design will maintain the character of Aughtonhead Lane, which as current is an unpaved bridleway.
Will do my best. Obviously, any access from Westbury Close or Lower or Long Innings to the new housing development has got to be to an adoptable standard. Highways are not going to accept an unfinished road, so it will have to be tarmacked. So the only way access can be gained in line with the policy across Aughtonhead Lane will to some extent change the character. There's no way around that, I'm afraid. The design does limit the amount of hedgerow that has to be removed. It has literally only been enough for the visibility space. And when you've got two-way traffic coming up to the right of way from both sides, but it is single track as it crosses the right of way. So the amount of road, hard surfacing, tarmacking that's had to be put across the right of way has been minimised by it being single track.
Does that answer your question? Councillor Ian Mantle?
Thank you. In the event that the single access is blocked, am I right that there is no alternative way and that everything would then be stopped at that point at which the blockage occurred?
That would be correct, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Peace?
You talked about taking out the hedgerow to improve the visibility and the safety. How would that be maintained? Hedgerow will grow back. How will you ensure that that junction remains safe for the people using Aughtonhead Lane?
Okay. I anticipate the road will be adopted by the local highway, well, by the highway authority. If that's not the case, it will be managed by the management company that deals with the open spaces within the site, and either option would include regular maintenance of all highway hedgerows, verges, etc., to make sure they're maintained.
Does that answer your question? Further questions? I've got a question which basically is about the safety of users of Aughtonhead Lane, and especially cyclists, and how they will know in advance that this crossing is now there and that they can expect vehicles to be crossing. Do you have any sort of design for that?
I believe there's a condition requiring the full details of signage, because that will be the main way that they will know. There will obviously be advanced signage. It will look somewhat different as you come along the lane, because obviously there will be an area of hedgerow missing, there will be hard surfacing, but advanced signage will be the main element of prior warning. It would be, I think, Chair, it would fall under the requirements of condition 3, but if that could be amended to be specific, I'm sure.
Can I have a follow-up? You must give myself a follow-up question. are there any thoughts yet on what kind of warnings there'll be? For instance, will the cyclist giving way, will it be crossing on a road hump, for instance? Have you gone into that sort of detail?
I think that will be a detail for discussion with the Highway Authority as the detailed plans are progressed. But it will need to be, as you say, a safe and appropriate solution.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Allen.
My apologies for coming again. Talking about this crossing, which is obviously the big issue here. Will it be illuminated? And you're saying that there's going to be signage down Alton Head Way. That means that's going to be completely changing the nature of it by putting new signage down it. So isn't that a fundamental change that's going to be made as well, further than just the 14 metres of hedgerow?
Some change to the character is unavoidable to provide an access in line with the policy. So yes, I do agree there will be an element of change, and yes, the road would be illuminated to adoptable standards.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Councillor McDevanham.
I just wondered, is there any possibility for safety of everyone concerned to have some kind of traffic light system in operation?
Nothing can be ruled out. It would obviously be an option. I think that would fundamentally alter the character. I mean, we've tried hard to minimise the impact, to comply with the policy in terms of character and appearance, to maintain the integrity of the right of way. And I think a kind of urban feature like that would change things fundamentally.
Thank you. And your question. Other questions? Is that all the questions? Right. Can I thank you? And can I invite the officer to respond to any issues raised?
Thank you, Chair. No, I have no response. Let me just check my notes. No, I'm happy with what's been said and questions asked. So no response unless anyone has any specific questions.
Thank you. And we haven't got the highways, have we? We have. Could we ask highways if they've got any response?
Good evening, Chair. My name is Sanoba Khan. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes. Can we? We'd like to ask you some questions. If that's okay.
Yes, of course, Chair. Please do.
Thank you.
I've got some notes made, so I can answer some of the other questions earlier on being raised.
Would you like to start then?
Sorry, myself or?
Yes. Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just to clarify on the issue of that was raised earlier on about priorities over the access between the right of way. I don't know if members are aware that there were recently changes to the highway code last year, which gave priority to pedestrians over cars at junctions and crossings, etc. And this is a crossing. So just to clarify, cars would have to give way to cyclists, pedestrians, and riders, and pedestrians, of course. So that's the current situation in terms of highway priorities. It's not the other way around. It used to be the other way around, but now priority has to be given to pedestrians to cross, cyclists and horses, etc. Some of the other questions that were being raised, I would just verify again what I think the applicant's agent was referring to in terms of lighting. If the Highway Authority will be adopting the road, it will be lit up. It would require it to be lit up. So that side of things at that junction will probably require some form of street lighting. I can't be clear about it, but there will be street lighting there. The other questions that were raised regarding delivery services. The applicants used in their TA, the database was TRIX, which is what is the tool that we use for predicting the trip generation of a development. And it's all inclusive of that. So we don't actually look at it separately. So a certain volume of developments will generate a certain level of trips, be it postal deliveries, shopping deliveries, etc., or just moving in sort of deliveries. So there are a whole various sort of standards that we use, and that's clearly already included as part of their assessments in number of trips the development will generate. And then in terms of the other aspects of highway improvements in the neighbouring junctions and streets, a condition was placed whereby they would have to do an audit of the crossing facilities in the nearby streets. So I think Councillor mentioned earlier on about what was it? Westbury Close crossings, junction improvements. There'll have to be tactile paving there, particularly for children crossing to the schools, etc. So all this will be considered as part of the condition that was placed to ensure that there are proper crossing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists as part of the review of that side of things for the development. And I think, I think that pretty much covers main points that were raised earlier on. So I hope I've covered most of them, but if anyone's got any questions, please do ask, fire away.
Thank you. That was very helpful, Mr. Khan. I've got some questions. First of all, from Councillor Nolan.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you could point us to which condition you were referring to there, because I don't see anything at the moment in the report that specifies that audit or any of the works in the nearby area.
I'm afraid I'm referring to the actual development that was approved for the development of the whole site, 49 units. In there was a condition that placed no development. Where's it gone?
Mr. Khan, it's...
Sorry. Was it in this one?
Those are suggested conditions by the Highway Authority on the other application, which has not yet been considered by.
Oh, right. My apologies.
That will be considered at some point in the future, but those were suggested conditions by the Highway Authority relating to a separate application that's not before you this evening. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah. My apologies. I was referring to that one. Yeah.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair.
Are we still on Councillor Nolan? I'm going back to Councillor Nolan.
Sorry, I think that makes sense. That I mean, the question's been answered. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Mr. Khan, but also probably the officer can help here. In the transport statement, it shows the site access design, which is the same as the one we saw on the slides. With the narrowing and the one-way working priority thing on there. Condition 3 on the application says no access development shall commence until detailed technical plans are submitted to and approved in writing, etc., etc. So can I assume that what's in that document there, the transport, isn't necessarily the final design?
No. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the final design, there will be further discussions that will have to be had with ourselves and the developer. I think for the purpose of what they've shown in their plans, it's a raised table. And again, that in itself is a calming feature. And also the narrowness, another calming feature. So you've got two calming features to ensure traffic does not speed along that junction, which again is not it's pretty normal. I mean, a lot of developments, a lot of normal highway, you've got sort of speed restricting features which narrow the road and give way markings. And they do pretty much work very well. And hopefully, in this case, should work even better because the volumes are very low. It needs to be taken on board that we are talking about a certain number of number of units, 43, 46, whatever it was. And the trip generation during the peak hours are relatively low and really shouldn't have that sort of a problem.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Levitt?
Yes, thank you. It does.
Thank you. Councillor Peace.
This might be another question going in two directions, but so the information we have in 4.3.13, the transport statement, says that the applicant is suggesting that priority is given to the motorists coming from the development, and says giving lane users will have priority. They may not feel the need to slow at this intersection, possibly leading to a risk of collision. So if what Highways, the gentleman from Highways has just said, Highways suggests that the people using the lane should have priority because that's the law, and the applicant says that the motorists coming from the site should have priority. And then the statement goes on to say, the visibility displays required by car drivers to see along the lane, this would rely on the clearing of hedgerow along the lane, potentially impacting the character of the lane. So if the pedestrians have to have priority, as now is the law, that would have a significant impact on the character of the lane, which goes against policy HT3. So this all seems very conflicting.
It's sorry.
Like to comment, please.
Okay, thank you. In terms of sightlines, they are a requirement. They have to be fulfilled. You cannot have sort of two ends of roads and they can't see each other, particularly in a setup like this. So the sightlines are more important just to ensure that drivers can see other drivers. In terms of the priority being given, I can't comment on the applicant's document now or when it was written. As I said, this was a change that came about last year or the year before? Just want to make sure. But at the end of the day, it is basically the way it's been now. Highway code states that pedestrians priority is given the other way around now. Even in normal junctions, if somebody's at a junction, priorities for a pedestrian to cross, vehicles have to stop or slow down. So the law is the law, and you know we have to ensure that the highway resembles that, and so priority has to be given. I think the applicant's consultant was saying that we will put up signage. There will be signage up there, and that will make it very clear that drivers have to give priority to cyclists, pedestrians along the lane.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Any other responses? No? Right. Thank you. So can we continue? Do I have a proposer? Councillor Levitt?
Oh, it's a difficult one, and I can understand the concerns, but given the conditions, I can't that can sort anything problems out, and we're well aware of what they are. I cannot see any valid planning grounds for refusing the application. Therefore, move we approve the recommendation, Chair.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, somewhat hesitantly second this. What we've got is a difficult decision about, I think, in the delineation of the considerations that we're making about the access itself and what the implications of the development that would eventually use that access might eventually be. And I think that's quite a hard distinction to make. But from my understanding is that the access alone is not responsible for what happens elsewhere along the road. Is that, correct me if I'm barking up the wrong tree?
We'll come back to the debate, shall we?
Yeah, okay. Well, that was just my contribution.
Thank you. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to accept the application. Shall we go to debate? Councillor Nolan.
I have some pretty strong concerns around not so much in terms of the applications before us. I think it's the use of the condition number 3, which seems to be holding the entire weight around the safety of the crossing that we're talking about. I'm somewhat concerned at the fact this application has come forward to us tonight. We've been told a lot about the potential safety features, the way that things we managed, but all these are completely, that they are entirely focused around the fact that this condition calls for further discussion and development of detailed technical plans for this crossing. I don't understand why we haven't had those plans generated in time for us to consider them, presumably as we are the final yes or no for a decision on a planning application coming forward in this district. It's very hard, therefore, to actually really determine on this matter whether or not we are putting forward an answer on something that is going to be safe for both residents and users of the bridleway itself, because we don't really know exactly what it is that we put in place to maintain that safety. And a lot has been said about the different ways it could be done, about the different methods, and using the expertise of those here to state what you could deliver at that. But we're now being asked to vote on a proposal where we don't actually know what it is that will come out at the end of this. And obviously I know that this is, you know, wider issues around the houses that will come later in the next application. This is purely access. But even on the basis of this access, we don't know what it is we are voting for in terms of design, in terms of the safety that will come out of the back of that, in terms of how it will function. And I'm still trying to, at the moment, make up my mind whether or not I can support this on any basis, because I don't know what it is I'm actually voting for or against. Again, it's a concern I have where we sit here as councillors voting on things where we don't have the full range of information in front of us. And realistically, past this point, there is nothing else we can do about this application and this part of it anyway. There's no influence we can have past this point when the final design will be produced.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Daniel Allen.
But backing up what Councillor Nolan said, how am I meant to vote on something that is purely theoretical at the moment? We aren't being told exactly how this is. We've been told by the representatives that this could completely change. We've been told by Highways that this could completely change. It's all going to be chosen by our officers, who I respect and know would do the right thing. But how can I represent the people that are going to be having an extra 270 vehicle movements around them when I don't know what's going to happen? And I'm also very, very worried that we are completely changing the nature of Orton Head Lane. That is a vital, useful access for people all over Hitchin. It's used by schools for cross-country events. It's used by cyclists, by horse riders. We have a green... I don't feel that it's a safe way to vote, and I will have to vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Other comments, please. Councillor Peace.
Risk of saying something very similar and reading things out from a screen again. Hertfordshire's draft active travel strategy says that we should be creating places where walking and cycling are safer and so convenient they become the natural choice for short trips. And I would like to echo the concerns that people using Orton Head Lane may have their safety compromised, and we haven't seen concrete proposals of how their safety will be maintained.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, I just want to refer to Councillor Nolan's point, which I thought was very well made. But I mean, I was assuming that the drawings that were shown about the design of that crossing were quite reliable, and now I'm beginning to think that anything could happen. What is the reality of that situation?
Do you want to respond?
Can I ask the officer that? Yeah.
Response from an officer.
Yeah.
We have a design before us that shows a certain level of detail. It shows where the access would go. It shows that there would be a raised platform, that the access would narrow down, and the aims of those design features are to minimise the impacts upon Orton Head Lane and provide safety features. And that is what you're being asked to grant planning permission for, the design that's before you in that regard. When it comes to condition 3, with regards to detailed technical plans, those are far more detailed and would put more detail to those basics. That's fairly standard for all our applications, actually. We get applications for housing development with access as shown. We're shown where the access would be, what the dimensions of the access would be, and some certain design features which are shown here, and that is what you're being asked to consider. That is quite a standard approach. Now, when it comes to more details of it, the matters are negotiated with the Highway Authority under this Section 278 agreement. Sometimes, with regards to those agreements, certain details that may be minor or may be more significant. If those detailed changes are significant and results in a change in the design that you're being asked to approve, then a fresh application would have to be submitted to us for that change design. So we would have control over the ultimate design of the access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ian Mantle.
Thank you. We've been talking all the time about the vehicular access to the site. Can I please suggest that we ought also to think at alternative accesses, pedestrian, cycling, not just on Orton Head Lane, but actually to the site itself. And I don't think that this particular one as a sole access point for pedestrians and cyclists and invalid carriages and all the other vehicles that you get in this day and age is acceptable. Now, I may well get told that this is going to come on the other application, but that shows the vice of accepting this one in isolation. So I personally am unhappy that it is being considered in isolation, because I think a lot of these questions ought to be being answered in the context of the whole development, not just simply this access point. And it's for that reason that I personally think this should be deferred until the two applications can be considered together, notwithstanding the convenience that might, or inconvenience that might cause the developer.
Thank you, Councillor Mantle. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you. I was actually going to say pretty much what Mr. Greaves has said there about the principles are there, the outlines there, and that's what we're determining tonight, whether the principle of the access point here is okay or not. Detailed design always comes later. We very rarely see a fully, in fact, the design here, the level of detail that we got tonight is more than we normally see on some of these types of things. That's really all I was wanting to say on it.
Other comments? So we've got a proposal and seconder to accept the application. We've also got a query about deferring until the other application is heard. I don't know if any councillors have got anything you want to say about that. No? Okay. Any more comments? Are we ready to go to the vote? So you are voting to accept the application.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. So that motion is carried. Item 6, planning appeals. Sean Greaves to present.
Chair, we have just one appeal decision that has been made since the last meeting, and we've had one appeal lodged. The appeal decision that has.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, you don't want to hear the appeals. Would you like leave if you wish? Thank you. Please continue.
Excuse me. So start again, shall I? We've had one appeal lodged since the last meeting and one appeal decision. I'll refer to the appeal decision. The appeal was allowed and it related to basically what's called a prior approval for telecommunications mast. It would replace an existing telecommunications mast, but would be 17.5 meters high instead of the current 10-meter high mast. And it's located, I don't know for those who know Royston, but it would be located in the corner of the Memorial Park opposite the Town Hall. And there's one there at the moment, along with a number of cabinets. And this appeal was against our refusal of the prior approval. The site's located in a conservation area, and we felt that it wasn't the best location for such a mast, despite the fact there's one there already. And the inspector found that the mast was in a prominent location, but it would be partially screened by trees, etc. And there is an existing mast in that position that it would replace. He acknowledged that it would be taller, but felt that given the location would be a reasonable distance from residential properties in a relatively urban area, felt that it wasn't an inappropriate location for such a mast and therefore allowed the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So that report is for noting only. Are there any questions about it? No? So I will close the meeting at 8:34. The next meeting of the PCC is on the 14th of September.